I ought to explain, Mike, why we're here, or you might think it's strange that we've come along.
Oh,
but
look, you must have...
No, I'm very comfortable. I was explaining to Marjorie, I work in a prep school in the New Forest in Hampshire, and I'm the headmaster of the school, and I've had an interest in Arnhem for quite a few years. And what I wanted to do is try and just record a few little stories to share with the children as a resource, an educational resource. And so Roger and I are visiting a few Arnhem veterans.
Oh, how lovely.
Just to get a little snippet, a little story or two, so that we can record them.
Roger's your film man,
Roger is the cameraman, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, John. And that's really why we're here, just to hear a tale or two, just so that we can record them. John! Great to see you! What a moment! Good for you! Good for you! Well done, well done! Harold! 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 John, I was telling them the story yesterday when we went to the woodland where you were wounded, and I said, we'll never see John Waddy, he's like the Holy Grail. I was telling them a bit as we stood near the Hartenstein. This is where you were with your Batman, and so they were getting a flavour of your story. Yeah.
You have a remembrance.
Well, you can't forget a story like that.
Yeah, exactly. Keep that one, man.
The first day, the 17th, was the first day, and then we knew that the operation was on. On the flight over, you can imagine, as far as the eye could see, there were streams of aircraft, tugs and gliders going out. And it was an amazing sight to be up there amongst them seeing. And the pilot of the tug cruise gave the signal to us, we're over our last turning point, now we're on our way up to Arnhem. We were expecting Arnhem to be relatively easy. That may sound strange, but everything had gone so well from going on from D-Day, going right across Europe, and been so successful that it looked as though ours would be an operation that would come off quite easily. Easily is putting a bit too much on it, but not as hard as we found it.
I remember marvelling at the extent of the operation, and when we were up in the air, looking around and seeing all the gliders and the aircraft massed there. But I've always been a fairly lucky person, and I had a lucky flight. I don't remember any flak at all. Some people were hit by flak.
When we got over the sea, we ran into flak. And for 3 times there was shrapnel was hitting the bottom of the plane. And that's a sensation. And everybody looked at everybody, and nobody said a word. And then it happened again, but nothing came through. It was only small shrapnel. But it was not alarming, but it put you off.
And I was standing in the door, and I suddenly saw underneath the door a Dakota, which had got a direct hit just to starboard of my aircraft, passed underneath my door. And I saw it go all the way down and crash in a big ball of white flame.
So we came in at 2,500 feet and pulled off and put on full flap and went fairly quickly straight down. And you're coming in at about 80 knots, something like that.
You come down like what we call a glider approach, straight down, then levelled off, and there's a machine gunner there, and the bullets were coming through the glider. Only one bloke got hit, private use. He shot, why? He shot, ow, in it, you know, but he was the only one who got hit.
You braced, you're ready. We hit the deck. We bounced again. The front nose wheel broke off. And we bounced along for about 100 yards, came to stop. The doors thrown down. It was a flap door, we threw the whole lot down. And piled out, the first 6 out would form a ring of defence. Now you've got to watch that you're not going to get a glider coming down on top of you again.
And a glider flying in the back of us, and this glider coming in the back of us, he probably thought he could get between us, and so he tipped his wing slightly, because he couldn't get, and his wing tip sliced right through the cockpit, our cockpit, but we had got out and everything, like, you know, so everything was okay.
We landed at the side of the woods on the east, and there was a big wood, a forest facing us, quite a way off. And I was watching the other gliders come down, and one particular glider, I thought, this fella's in trouble, he's going to run in this forest. And this is only my version of it. It seemed as if he'd veered to the right where the forest were, and this is only my thoughts, hoping that his wing would probably catch the first trees and drop him. And instead of doing that, the glider tippled straight over like that. And Mr. Royal, Lieutenant Royal, and me run to see what we... And every man was dead in the glider. They'd all been killed.
Well, you could hear them bullets whizzing past you. You were lucky, like I was, to not get hit. See? Well, that's it. You're down quick. In fact, if you shoot into them, that was it.
As I landed on the DZ and started to get up, I was hit twice by 2 bullets, neither of which hit me flesh-wise. One bounced, it seemed to bounce off my map case, and the other one bounced off my first aid dressing. And I thought, I'd been hit, you know, and this is desperate. But I didn't really, no, I can't say, I don't remember being desperately worried or frightened about it. I expected it.
We were sitting in our front room having a cup of tea or something like that when we heard the aircraft approaching. Because it was such a funny, a strange noise, low-flying aircraft, we went outside to have a look. We stood right here in front of the house. More people came out from the different houses on the road, just stood together with all these people watching what was going on. An amazing sight, for us, a very happy sight.
Big planes, slow planes coming along, and then suddenly therefore all the parachutes fall out. It was really, it was like a miracle.
I remember all of a sudden the glider planes landing, the parachutes landing, and a long colonne of jeeps coming our way. And we all run out, and we were so happy. And I think it took the airborne division a lot of time that everybody was on the road and yelled, and we thought we were free. And that was the beginning of the Battle of Arnhem.
It did take us too long, in my view. It took us about somewhere near 5 hours to get to the bridge. We did run across one or two more German outposts that engaged us with fire, but they didn't really put up a resistance. We swept through them in quite no time, actually, and then arrived at the bridge. I suppose there was about 100 men or so actually on the bridge by the time I got there.
Well, the first thing we did, we took over a house, a couple of houses, like right at the bridge. And within about a couple of hours, one of the para officers come on and chased us out. He says, "You're too near the bridge," he says, "for when my unit, they were going to put a bayonet attack in on the bridge itself, you know. But so we had to get out of there and had to get farther back, like the house."
And that first night, was there much action or was it relatively
yes,
quiet?
oh, yeah, there was quite a bit of action the first night.
I mean, we could be in one house, we could be in one room, and the Germans were either in the room below or above or alongside. It was really savage fighting.
My first German soldier that I killed on the way to Arnhem was a young boy, more 18, his hat fell off. And he was a true Aryan blonde, his eyes were open, and I looked at him and I thought, his mother even doesn't know he's dead yet. How can I hate him? The next firefight, the man next to me had half his face blown off. So I lost that inhibition.
What goes through your mind when you're killing other men?
You weren't shooting people, you were shooting the enemy. But they weren't human beings, they were the enemy. Do you follow?
They're the enemy and they're dangerous. The adrenaline's pumping on both sides at this stage. So there's little time for that. You've got to do your bit to cover your mate's back.
We're going down the basement now of the Hotel Dryerord, and if you look straight ahead, that led to the main basement. And then when you turn to your right, or to your left, you go into the wine cellar. On the eve of the second day of the battle, Lieutenant Colonel Peyton Reed ordered us into the basement. I was there when that was done. He greeted my stepfather at the front door very jovially, and my stepfather let him in, and he was told that things would likely heat up because we weren't having any idea that there was really a big battle going on. We thought it was already won. So we were ordered into the basement, and all the people on this street, on the opposite side of the street, all came to the basement here.
Now we are in the cellar. It is very small, as you can see, and it was all dark gray and sad. And here were fly screens and our apples and food. And the one soldier that came into our cellar was Lionel Tarr. He fell down with the roof of a school down on the earth. He was completely in shock, and the orderly Scan Bolden said, "Kate, you have to take him in the cellar." So he was with us, and he started to sleep 24 hours in this cupboard.
The last soldier that was brought in here, and he was laid out right here, right on the floor, and he had a leg almost amputated, and he was bleeding profusely, and the British had no bandages, they had nothing here, and they asked the women if they would take their underclothes and let them have them for bandages, and this woman went right into hysterics. That wasn't going to happen with her, but she did give it up in the end. I mean, she was persuaded to do it, but she was just a difficult lady.
The most terrifying sound we heard in those days was a salvo of these multiple rocket launches. You could hear them coming in screaming loud, and you knew there were 6 or 12 or 16 rockets coming in at the same time. And these explosions just made the whole house shake. It smelled after cordite. Being in the basement itself is not a pleasant experience. It's moist, you get chilly, you feel uncomfortable. You want to eat, there's nothing to eat. You're thirsty, no more water. And you just sit, nothing else you can do. You cannot read, there's no conversation going on. Everybody's sitting there like zombies.
We'd taken cover in this coffin and clog factory, and we were just about to brew up, and we got our little burners and got the water on. We hadn't had a decent cup of tea since 7 o'clock the previous morning, and there was a sudden shout, "Enemy armour on the bridge, hold your fire, hold your fire. Hold your fire." And this was repeated. And then as they got nearer, all hell let loose. The sound was horrendous. Small arms fire, both incoming, outgoing, Piats, 6-pounder shells. All hell sounded like the Hades of hell going off, echoing off the tunnel itself, the bridge support. And this went on not for a brief moment, it went on till 11 o'clock in the morning basically. And we were being attacked from north, south, east and west again there. They were pressuring in.
3 German tanks came round the corner and sat in the road 30, 40 yards from us. And one of those, the middle tank, fired a shot, a solid shot, not an explosive shot, a solid, I mean from a gun this size. The shot came straight through the hole. This corporal was led on the floor, and as he was led on, it hit his shoulder here and ripped, it ripped his body completely in half. And
there was an old lady that wouldn't move in the house that we were. And our lads used to take, down in the cellar, used to take her drink of water or maybe a bit of bread or something like that. She wouldn't move, she wouldn't go, she was all this. And our house was set on fire with a mortar bomb, and she wouldn't go out of her house. She died in that house, that lass. She must have been in her 80s.
Most of these Germans we met were the 9th SS Panzer Division, and boy, were they tough troops. They were not afraid of us, and we were not afraid of them. And it was a real. You imagine 2 or 3 of our men and 2 or 3 of their men in a room this size fighting to kill one another.
All our fighting was down at the bridge itself. So what was going on at Oosterbeek and that, we hadn't a clue.
The Hartenstein mansion you're looking at behind me was, during the battle, as of the second day, it was the headquarters of General Urquhart, commanding officer of the 1st British Airborne Division. Initially, of course, the battle took place near Arnhem Bridge. But on Wednesday, it was clear that the 2nd Battalion of Frost near the bridge could not be strengthened because the Germans had cut off all the approaches to Arnhem. It was then that General Urquhart decided to set up a defense perimeter around the headquarters.
We had guns in the field below the church who were firing directly at Germans within sight, looking one way, looking east, and behind me there was my other troop who were looking directly at Germans facing west. So we could see we were at the base, of the whole situation, and divisional headquarters was a mile or so, a couple of miles up, and it was then that we became conscious of the fact that we were surrounded, in effect.
The Germans then realised that they had three sides of us they had, and the 4th side was the river. All they had to do was keep shelling and mortaring without getting any casualties. And it just went on and on and on until days become... I didn't know what day it was, and most people can't remember. I could never remember what day it was. The only difference was when it went dark, you knew it was night time.
They're bound to get us sooner or later, because we're a small perimeter, and they bracketed it, you see. And the story was that if the Germans shot you from that side, and you put your stomach in, the bullet went through and killed the German that side. The perimeter was so small.
The house that we occupied was set on fire, and we were forced out of that house, across the road, and we dug slit trenches, and that was in the bank that overlooked the river.
The Americans call them foxholes. Now the British version is a slit trench, and to describe it as a slit trench, the nearest I can give you is like a grave, as if they dug a grave for a coffin to go in. In some cases, it was a grave.
When the mortar bombs were coming near you, they sounded like a turtle dove, and the nearer they came to you, the louder was the noise, and you had to get down then. And you were frightened. I was. But as soon as the thing had gone off, you're back again.
When we were under heavy attack, big cannon shells from the Tiger tanks or the Tiger tank would shake the whole building. And when the building shook, all the mortar flaked off of the walls here, and the pieces of brick fell down, and the dust was just unreal.
The worst thing in that week, I remember, is the night from Saturday to Sunday when a German soldier was hit close by to where our air vent was. The Germans were that close by then. He was hit somewhere in the middle of the night, and he started screaming, "Help." He called for his mother, "Mutti, Mutti, help me, it hurts, help, help, help." And that went on for hours. Nobody came to his help. His friends couldn't come because they would be shot by the paratroopers in the house. We couldn't get out in order to help him because we would be shot by the Germans. So within 10 meters from you, someone is dying and yelling for help. That's a sound. It was not a noise. That's a sound I will never forget.
Some of the mortars they used were multiple barreled ones, and you'd hear hoop, 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 like that. And then, you know, a few seconds later, the results, and these mortar bombs hit the top of trees and splattered, you know, the shrapnel spotted or whatever the shot. I certainly remember being afraid then.
Everybody was frightened. If your life's at stake, you're frightened. Even if it's only crossing road by some car coming towards you. It's hard to describe just what the feeling is, you know, when you know that these shells, the next one could hit you. And after about 5 days, I was convinced that nobody would get out of this situation. If they was alive, they'd be prisoners of war.
We were under pressure of one sort and another all the time. So there was no prepared meals or anything like that. We lived off what we got on us.
At first, I had what you call hunger pains, you know, in your stomach. But eventually they go. And you don't eat them, you don't think about food then. After they've gone, you know, you're not hungry. Well, I wasn't. I'm going to speak for myself. I didn't feel hungry no more.
After about the third day, you don't think about it anymore. Your stomach's empty, you can feel it empty. There is no food, and you just get acclimatized.
There was no food down here to speak of, and I'd like to be more specific, but I don't really know what there was down here because there was so little. But my stepfather in the same neighborhood that I've been mentioning, that was a leader as well, were allowed up 2 or 3 times during the battle, and they scrounged across the road because people had gardens there, and I do know that they brought back a dozen or so tomatoes, and that was a tremendous find. I mean, we all got a little piece of tomato.
Friday afternoon it started raining, and we had a ground sheet with us, and it was quiet in our vicinity, so I pegged out my ground sheet just outside the trench to catch the water. About half an hour and I had a look out, and there was probably half a pint of water in the bottom. So I said to Major Toll, "Sir, I've got half a pint of water, I'm going to get that." He said, "No, leave it, Staff, and we'll get it when it's finished." So, okay, we left it. Then came us what we called a stonk, mortar bombs. And they were all right on our vicinity. The 3, Buster Baker, Johnny Johnson, 3 were killed. Then it stopped. I looked out. My ground sheet was up in a tree in tatters and no water. Now, I was more furious about that than anything they'd done. And I remember saying to Major Toller, if you'd have let me have that, we'd have had a drink of water. Now, you've deprived me of water. And I was really angry with him. Then after I thought, I said, I'm sorry, sir. He said, that's all right, sir. He forgave me for talking like that to a CO. So there was no, from then we had no water.
Quite often we just had to sleep in the open on the field, and that wasn't very comfortable, as you can imagine.
You slept when you fell asleep, really. Daylight or darkness were irrelevant, really. I think that the whole thing was so noisy and hazardous, really, that you weren't conscious of the passage of time.
The mortar bomb dropped in the trench next to mine and unfortunately killed the 2 Kings and Scottish Borderers that were in that trench. Of course, I got a lot of effect from this, and my head was well, I still got good looking, aren't I? But it was a bit of a mess when the battle was on. And at the local aid post, they spent about an hour picking all this stuff out of my face and out of my head and so on. I put bandage over my head so there was just my eyes and my mouth. I came outside and looked for the rifle because I'd left it outside at me. So I looked for the rifle, it had gone. I don't know who would take, someone had taken it. I got back to my trench and I thought, well, I better try and see if I can get a rifle. So without thinking too much about it, I got out of my trench and I thought, well, I'd check to see whether the 2 in the next trench really are done for totally, and they were. And as I bent down to have a look at them, a sniper put a bullet through my back. So I got my head all in bandages and I got shot through the back and it came out through the arm. So I was back in the first aid post about 10 minutes after they spent an hour on me, and they said, oh my God, no, we just had an hour with you and now we got you back again. So that's what happened to me. It's a bit stupid to be wounded like that, but that's exactly what happened.
I took a wounded comrade who was hit by he was injured by a shell. And I got the jeep and took him to the Hartenstein. And the sergeant said, oh, put him down there, just casually.
Where was he wounded?
His arm was hanging down, but he must have died almost straight away. Because when I thought about him, so I went back that night and I asked the medical people, and they were busy, they didn't know. They said he'll be down there, and he was dead, where I'd put him.
It was more or less, Johnny's being killed, Tom's being killed, or whatever being killed. And then you're on to something else. You know, you thought about it, but we were very, very good, very close.
Heartbroken, no, and angry, no. You're just slightly despairing that this is the way things were going. But you've got a job to do, and if you joined Airborne, you knew your chances were not good. You just accepted it.
My thoughts were, the telegrams are going to go to these houses that they don't even know they're dead yet. We were invincible, you see. Although you're near, as you said, near to death, it won't happen to you.
they'd just finished shelling and mortaring, and we'd plastered it all day long. And I saw a man walk, well, he was, I couldn't tell where he was doing it, Private Lock he was called. And I shouted him over, and I said, "Where you going?" And he said, "I think I've been wounded." Well, I says, "You think? Well, you've not been wounded in your legs because you're walking." And he said, "Oh, I think I've been hit in the back." And when I said, "Well, turn round," and his airborne smock was blooded. And when I lifted his smock and shirt up, he had small black dots all over his back. They were tiny splinters. And so I said, "Now, about 5 minutes in that direction, in the old there's a place there where there's a lady's house been commandeered, which I didn't know then, but it was Kate to Horst. And I took him down there.
So lovely to be here. It's such a highlight of our trip. We've had an amazing time. We're all emotionally exhausted, as you can imagine.
And you know who's here, our guest?
I don't know.
David Whiteman. He was a medical officer here those days.
Wow.
So it's very special, I think.
Yes, that's incredible.
That's great.
Hello, Mr. Whiteman. What a privilege to have you here as well. Fantastic. We brought a group from the New Forest, a school in the New Forest. Can you describe what it was like to them? You don't need to hold back. Let them know the full extent of what it was like.
The lady called the Angel of Arnhem then had so many wounded inside. And we had this as a dressing station. My job was to go out and treat the wounded that were found all around and fetch them in. Once we got them inside, I left them to somebody else to treat the wounds. I went out and brought somebody else in. In the meantime, some of them died inside. You had to fetch them out. I'm telling you the bad things that happened.
Why was she the Angel of Arnhem? What was she doing that was so remarkable and special?
She treated everybody as though it was her own son. She looked after us. Absolutely. I can't. She gave them spirit to live. And somehow I don't think a lot of them would have survived if it wasn't for her.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real privilege, not only to hear those stories and your memories, but to hear them here. It feels very, very special.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, I hope you enjoy yourselves.
During the battle, there were lots of very bleak and horrible times, but was there good humour?
Yes. Yes, there was. I've still got my sense of humour. Yes, there was. You would say, "What's for tea?" "Oh, we're having trifle today," you know. We knew we weren't having anything, but...
someone has said in England, if ever you meet a Battle of Arnhem, raise your cap to him and wish him good day. And this, they dropped some newspapers the next day, and this was in there. So all that day, everyone who met said, good morning, and raised their beret or tin hat. And how are you? We were very, very polite. From this, it was a great morale booster, really.
In this outhouse of this farm was a big a container, and there was a cook in there and stirring it all up. But so this bloke said to me, go and have a look, will you, Johnny? So he knew who he was. He was a para, but he knew me. And I left my rifle, I crawled in, and I see the cook on me. And the bloke, I say, when are we going to eat? Don't worry, there'll be plenty of, 4 hours on, there's plenty of everybody. And we were like the Bissell kids, you know, smell of this cook and the drooling away. And the big almighty bang, and a shell, or a mortar shell, hit the thatched roof, fell in the soup. So that was that.
Well, I like a joke, like, you know. I mean, I always did do. And it's part of life. You know, if you can't have a joke, you know, if you can't laugh at something, life's too short.
The thing in everybody's mind was the thinking of the relief army, 30 Corps, coming up from the south all the time. We were led to believe, or the thought was that they'd be with us in 48 hours. And that was the whole object of the operation. We had secured the bridge in a way, we had some people at the bridge who were overlooking it. And the thought in our minds all the time was, how are the 30 Corps getting on? And when will they get through?
No, the people I were with, we used to see the officers, not many officers about, and you say, when's the 32nd Army coming? They say tomorrow. They didn't know, but the morale booster, we're coming here tomorrow. Tomorrow never came, did it?
We were aware it had been a cock-up, and of course we were asking questions every day. Where is the cavalry? And they never did turn up.
We'd come out about midnight, there was 4 of us. And every garden we went to try and get through, to get up out of town. We could hear German voices in it, so we had to double back all the time. And on the Thursday, we were going to go over a wall, and our sergeant was with us. And he said the Germans have the wall in that garden as well. So we said, we'd better wait until it's a bit light at the back of these bushes. We got back of these bushes. And all of a sudden there was a German come in towards us, and he had a white flag, spoke perfect English. And he said, you can shoot us if you like, but it wouldn't pay you. He said, we've got you pinned, you know, where you're at. And he said, one of you can stand up and have a look around if you want. So our sergeant stood up, and all around us was these machine guns, all around the garden. And our sergeant says, well, he says, we needn't throw our lives away. We've now to fight with, you know, with no bullets allowed. So he just says, we might as well pack in and call it a day. So we give ourselves up, like, you know.
One of my blokes, a bloke named Norman Butterworth, I told him to put his handkerchief on, or fix bayonet, put his handkerchief on the end of the bayonet and crawl up the embankment, waving it, and then that was it. So he waved, and as he showed himself the top of the embankment, so a machine gunner opened up and mowed him down, sort of thing. And the next thing we heard was one shot, and the officer next to the machine gunner shot him in the head and killed his own machine gunner, and then told us to come forward. Said we were very brave, but very foolish.
Early in the morning, Monday morning, a German voice all of a sudden screams, "Any civilians in the house?" Yeah, 10 people yell, "Yes." Out, 2 minutes. And then you go. And you know you're going into a very dangerous world. And I remember we came up with our hands in the air, and we had to pass between the Germans and the Brits that were shooting at each other. And we came down that little path there, out into the street. The Germans were behind this hedge, the Brits were in the house. And then we had to walk through and make our way out. And there was a German officer lying there against the hedge, just going like that, snel, 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 go, go, go. And that's why we went that way, otherwise we probably would have gone that way. It's as simple as that. You didn't think anymore. Someone had to indicate to you what you had to do next. And that's it. Then we were out of Oosterbeek.
I remember actually, maybe my first remembrance, that we came out of the cellar and that there was no, in my memory, there was no color. Everything was without color. And then we were, we had to evacuate on a little wagon, and my mother covered us so that we couldn't see what the garden looked like. And further on the road, when she uncovered us, we saw the dead, and I remember very well.
I thought when I got to the river, there'd be some boatman there saying, "Where the bloody hell have you been? We've been waiting for you." And to my utter dismay, when we got to the sandbank where the boats, what were left of them, were going, there must have been at least 400 men. And I thought in another hour, 3/4, it's going to be daylight. So what do we do?
I decided I was going to swim. And I called for volunteers. And I had to remind people that it was not going to be an easy swim, because the river was 200 yards wide and there was a very strong current. And I had two volunteers. One was my company, not my regimental sergeant, a company sergeant Major Tift, and my batman. And we took off most of our clothes. I kept my red berry on, put my silver cigarette case into it to protect it, and got rid of our arms, got rid of our boots, got rid of our trousers, and swam. Swimming over, my batman got into trouble. About halfway across, I looked around and he was spluttering away. And my sergeant major and I sort of got behind him and tried to hold him up.
He was only a slight man, as I mentioned, but he was slippery, and we couldn't hold him. He slipped away, and eventually he disappeared. And at night time, what can you do? You can't dive at night time. And that was it. He'd gone.
So we got down to the river, and the boat came in. How far we got, I don't know, but all of a sudden, it wasn't a bang, it was more of a woof. And I'm in the water, on my back, and my left leg's hurting awful. And I thought, I've been shot in the leg. What had happened afterwards, they said, they saw it, the boat got a direct hit, and we all got shot. So I'm on my back, my airborne smock was holding the air. So I was floating like a balloon man. And I couldn't swim, I couldn't use this arm, I couldn't use that leg. And these two were useless. And it a cacophony of noise, as you see on the film, wasn't when we came, it's all these shells and mortar. The Germans thought reinforcements were coming across to us, so they were shelling the river. That was all the noise and the smoke. But my ears filled with water, and that it deadened the noise. I could see the shells bursting, the sparks, and very lights, but the noise had gone. It was lovely. And I thought, I'm going to drown. And they say when you're drowning, your life flashes in front of you. This was all detached. It wasn't me. I was thinking it. I was so calm. I'm a married man, but all I thought of was my mother will never know what happened to me. Not my wife. My mother will never know what happened. I thought I'd be in the reeds and rot away and that. But I couldn't care less. And then this leg went down, and I thought, that's the bottom. It's not. I thought that was the river. I thought it was not very deep. Then my head hit something. And I'm trying to think what it was, because I'm all disorientated. There were groins that went out in the river, obviously. And a Canadian boy said, the body just come in here, will you give me a hand? I said, I'm not a body, I'm alive. Oh, he said, come on.
We lost 231, I think, of the glider pilots who went into Arnhem. And I think probably about 1,000 of us went in altogether, something like that.
The company was about 112, maybe 115 men, and there was less than 30 got back.
In our hut there was 20 of us, and 2 got back. They 2 were all right. 5 were wounded and 13 were killed.
28 went in and 2 came out. Me and another bloke. 14 were there.
38 set off, and altogether, initially 6 got back prisoner and wounded, and then I found out 3 or 4 others had got back different times, different places, POW. So altogether 9 came back. Some are missing, some are buried, I don't know.
Must have been very
moving moment that my father came back to find us in the cellar, but we had gone already the Tuesday morning. But then he had to bury first all the dead, 58 people. And so he did it, and then the priest came along, and so together they did it. They buried 58 people. Yeah.
Sophie, thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you for
Thank
tea.
you.
Thank you very much. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
They keep coming. Yeah, it's always moving.
When they came back after the war, invited to attend memorial services, it turned out that there was a deep friendship between the veterans from the 1st British Airborne Division and the people of Oosterbeek. And I think the source of that friendship lies in the fact that the Battle of Arnhem was a shared experience. The paratroopers were in our houses, used our houses as their defensive positions. We were in the basement waiting for the end of the battle, but we took care of each other.
Why do you return so often?
Because of the friendship of the Dutch people, which was apparent right from the start. And we feel so guilty that we cause them so much grief. And they, in turn, have never blamed us at all.
A, it is a reunion of the ones who are still here. We get together. B, I'm visiting my friends. And we are saying you're not forgotten.
The most touching part of this ceremony at all is the children laying the flowers on the graves. That to me it's something you can't describe at all. I think it's a wonderful gesture, and proud to watch the children do it, but it's very, very hard to watch them. I've seen veterans too out crying. Probably I've shed tears in there.
They were a great bunch of lads. They were smashing. Yeah. I used to say, like, I'd go out with them tomorrow. Back with the same lads. Yep.